Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planning for Retirement podcast, where we help educate you on how retirement works. This is episode 43, Stop Planning for a Normal Retirement Age. I'm Kevin Lau. I'm your host. I've been a financial planner for 15 years and have a passion for education, which is what this podcast is all about. Our mission is to educate you to increase clarity and confidence to achieve financial security. I'm also the owner of Imagine Financial Security, which is an independent financial planning and investment management firm based in Florida. However, this information is for educational purposes only and should not be used as investment, legal, or tax advice. All right, everybody, I am super excited to be recording this episode today. It is, Friday, May 10th. This will be coming out on, I guess that would be May 16th, next Thursday. I just came back from a family vacation to Hilton Head, South Carolina, which was wonderful. But my whole family, we've been kind of taking turns passing this minor sickness around. So it has been my turn last week to get a little bit of a sore throat, a little bit of congestion. So my apologies in advance if my voice sounds a little bit weak, but nonetheless, we are back in the saddle, back in action, and very excited because we had our newest team member of Imagine Financial Security start this Monday, Roberto, and he is a retired firefighter of 20 plus years and has been interested in personal finance, did some personal finance coaching, actually got his enrolled agent designation and has been doing tax preparation over the last 5 years, and is in the process of preparing for and taking his certified financial planner designation. So we're very excited to have him join the team. He brings a wealth of knowledge from a tax perspective, which is great. We're all about helping clients reduce and minimize taxes, and he is going to be a huge asset to the team going forward. But I bring this up because I've had Roberto sit in on, I think, every single meeting I had this entire week. So Roberto, if you're listening to this, my apologies. I know you've been drinking through a fire hose this week. So he's been sitting through all my meetings. And one of the things that stood out to me was two of the clients that we met this week were retiring much earlier than anticipated. And both of those scenarios were related to unexpected health issues. Okay. One of them is now on disability. His wife is still working for a few more years, thankfully, and he does have a disability policy in place, thankfully. So it could have been worse. The other is related to a cancer diagnosis and potentially retiring much earlier than anticipated as well. So I think this is important because this took me back to my days studying for the RICP, the Retirement Income Certified Professional Designation, and kind of made me think back to the stat that really resonated with me. So I went back to my coursework, went back into my notes, and here it is. 51% of retirees retired earlier than anticipated. 51%, okay? So there's a better than 50% chance that whatever you think you're going to retire earlier, okay? And spoiler alert, because I'm going to be talking about this here shortly, the number one reason was related to health, okay? So I started to go down this rabbit hole, doing some research, and I thought this would be a great episode to talk about and encourage you all to stop planning for a normal retirement age in your assumptions, okay? Even if you do end up working until 70 or 65, okay? You shouldn't build that into your calculations. I mean, if you're sitting here at 50 today and you're planning to work another 20 years, that's not smart, okay? I'm working with a client right now who's 62, planned on working at least until 65 when he turned Medicare eligibility. And during the pandemic, he moved down from New York down to the sunny state of Florida in hopes of that, hey, I can work remotely. I'm feeling good. I can coast to retirement, continue to build my assets while I'm working remotely and having fun. But lo and behold, they're bringing everyone back to the office now. And so he's got to either A, move back to New York, or B, pick a random satellite location in Florida, which, by the way, none of those satellite locations are in the town he moved to. So that's a problem. So he might end up retiring this year too. So my point is, things that are out of our control often are the reasons why folks retire earlier. Okay. So, and those inputs that you tell your financial advisor, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Financial Planner, Mr. or Mrs. Financial Advisor, I want to work until 70. Well, that is significantly going to impact the calculations on how much you need to save for retirement, how much risk you need to take, how long your portfolio needs to last while you're spending down the portfolio. And so I don't think that's a prudent way to go. And even if you do work until 70, let's say you love what you do, you love your job, I would still assume you retire at 62 or 63 or 64. Okay. And then control what you can control. Okay. But anyways, what I wanted to do as well is we're going to break this down today, and we're going to talk about the impact of planning for an earlier retirement. So we're going to talk about those factors that are going to change, behaviors that you need to change, and risks that you need to consider by planning for an early retirement. But I also wanted to go through each of those assumptions for planning for retirement, not on this episode today, but spreading that over the next, let's say maybe a handful of episodes, talking a little bit about the different assumptions that go into a financial plan. Okay. We've got retirement age, which is what we're going to talk about today. We've got how much do you need from a spending perspective relative to what you're spending today. So we'll touch on that assumption. We'll touch on inflation. We'll touch on longevity. We'll touch on investment returns and also on taxes. So like I said, today I want to focus on the retirement age conversation, because this is then going to drive a lot of these other future assumptions that we're going to talk about going forward. So with all that being said, long story short, stop planning for a normal retirement age. So what is normal? All right. Well, according to Social Security, full retirement age for most individuals is going to be between the ages of 66 and 67. Okay. So the issue is, because of that full retirement age notion, when you see your Social Security statement, which you can see by logging into SSA.gov, you'll see your full retirement age and what that might be. But most people then automatically assume, hey, I'm just going to work until that age, and that's when I'm going to start Social Security and all things are going to be great. Well, again, if you're 50, 52, 53 years old, that's another potential 12, 13, 14, 15 years away. And that's a big if you do work until 67. Okay. In fact, the average worker over age 50 plans to retire at 67. Okay. Probably because the full retirement age calculation out there. So, but it turns out most people don't retire at 67. Okay. Most people don't even retire at 65 when they try to turn that magic age 65 for Medicare eligibility. Most people don't do that either. According to two annual surveys of working and retired Americans by the ERBI and also by the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies, I'm going to link those in the show notes. The average retirement age is 62 years old. Okay. So again, if you're 55, instead of planning on working until 67, where you have a 12-year time horizon, you should probably plan to work until 60 or 62 at best. Okay, so that gives you a potential 5 to 7 year window of accumulation and savings. So what's the impact of this? All right, I mean, what is going to change here, right? I mean, if you're 55 and you had been planning to work until 70, you probably had a pretty nice looking plan, because you're going to get the max Social Security benefit at 70. That's going to line up for when you also start portfolio withdrawal. So you're going to have no income gap is what we like to call it. So what is going to change? All right. Well, there's several things. And before I get into those things that are going to change, those 5 issues that you need to consider when you're planning for an early retirement, I want to talk about the why. Why do people tend to retire earlier? I already told you the spoiler alert that the majority of people retire early because of health-related reasons. That accounts for about 46% of those individuals who retired earlier than had planned. 46% of them cited health reasons. 30% cited being laid off or offered an early retirement package. 11% said they needed to care for a loved one. Okay. So the majority of the scenarios, basically, if you add those 3 up right there, those are the top 3. That's 87%. The majority of those, all of those are uncontrollable. Okay. Most of the time, those are going to be uncontrollables. Health diagnosis, uncontrollable. Being laid off or offered an early retirement package or a forced retirement, uncontrollable. Needing to care for a loved one, uncontrollable. So again, focusing on the things that you can control, which is basically the assumption of when you want to retire, okay, is one of those factors that you can change. Okay. So you can say, hey, instead of working until a normal retirement age 67, maybe I do plan to 60 or 62. Okay, so what's the impact? What are those 5 things that we mentioned? Well, the first thing, probably very straightforward, is you're needing to save more and invest more. Okay, pretty straightforward. Now, a good saver, by definition, saves on average about 10 to 15% of their gross income. And if you're planning for a slightly earlier retirement age than normal, so if you're going to plan to retire at 60, even if you don't do that, by the way, even if you love what you do, which by the way, I'm in that camp. I love what I do. I don't see myself at 60 doing nothing. But I'd love to have financial independence, truthfully, before I turn 50. Okay. That's when I'm planning to retire and have financial independence. And by the time I turn 50, I have the option to say, I can quit if I want to, or I can sell my business if I want to. I personally, in my mind right now, in my brain today, I don't want to do that because I'm having a lot of fun. I'm having more fun in my career today than I ever have. Okay. But by planning the retirement age earlier, significantly earlier, you're going to need to increase your savings rate. I would argue probably closer to 20% of your gross income, if not 25% of your gross income could be a benchmark to shoot for if you're planning to retire before 62 years old. Second thing is Medicare eligibility. That starts at 65. We've already talked about this a little bit. And a big reason folks work until 65 is so they can have that Medicare eligibility because they're so afraid of what they're going to do for health insurance if they wait until, or if they retired at 60 or 61 or 62. Okay. Have no fear. Most people don't realize buying private health insurance on the exchange, or better yet, the Affordable Care Act exchange, it's not that complicated. Okay. I do it with my family. I mean, it's not cheap. But if you're retired, your taxable income, your earned income, your taxable income is going to be pretty much next to nothing. Okay. Or very low. Maybe you've got some interest income from bonds or interest income from a high yield savings account. Maybe you have dividends that are spinning off from stocks that you own or ETFs that you own. Maybe you have a Social Security benefit that's already started. Maybe you have a pension, but all things being equal, I think the majority of folks that retire at 60 or 61 or 62, they are going to have relatively low taxable income. And they're usually surprised by this. And that's generally an opportunity where we can talk about Roth conversions or tax gain harvesting. But another benefit of having low taxable income is the ACA subsidies. And if your income is fairly low, your cost for health insurance could be next to nothing. Okay. It might be less expensive than what you were paying when you were working. And so keep that in mind. It's like, don't let healthcare force you into a job that you hate until 65. Okay. Or just because everyone else is talking about, hey, I'm working until 65 just to claim Medicare. Don't let that be you and say, hey, I'm going to just follow the herd and just retire at 65 just because that's what my friend down the road or my neighbor across the street told me. You can get private health insurance before 65, or you could even work a different job. You could even transition something else that is pretty much mindless work that you can do just for fun because you enjoy it, but that provides health insurance. But my point is there are other solutions before you turn age 65 and then Medicare kicks in. Okay, but you have to have a plan for healthcare. You've got to increase your savings rate. Okay. The third thing I would say is you probably need to stay aggressive with your investment strategy for a little bit longer. All right. I already talked about this on a previous episode, so I don't want to beat a dead horse on this one, but this is a mistake I see time and time again where folks that are preparing for retirement, they are thinking, oh my gosh, I need this money in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I'm going to dial back my risk. Or worse, hey, I'm going to use this target fund. I want to retire in 2025. Therefore, I'm going to pick this 2025 target fund. And this target fund just forces you into being super conservative because that's how they're designed. And by doing so, you're basically bringing in inflation and longevity risk into the picture more than is necessary. All right. And when I say stay aggressive, I'm not talking about pedal to the metal 100% in stocks or betting everything on the Magnificent Seven or throwing everything into the Bitcoin ETF. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, let's say the benchmark portfolio for a retiree is 60% equities, 40% fixed income. I'm saying maybe we stay at 75% equities or 80% equities for a period of time, at least that first phase of retirement. So we can keep not the pedal to the metal, but we can keep that risk on, capture those returns early on, hopefully that the market cooperates, and we can continue to build that portfolio and protect that inflation risk, protect that longevity risk that comes in the picture if we did retire earlier. Okay. So staying aggressive a little bit longer is very, very important. Now, the fourth thing kind of relates to this, but planning for longevity. Let's say you do retire at 60 and let's say your life expectancy is, higher than average. Maybe you've got longevity in your genes. Maybe you're Superman, Superwoman health. There's there's a possibility you or your spouse, if you're married or have a partner, may live a pretty long life. Maybe it's 30 years or maybe it's 35 years. And so this kind of really goes hand in hand with what I just mentioned, staying aggressive longer and maybe even staying fairly aggressive throughout your retirement years to protect that inflation risk, protect that longevity risk, and then coming up with a sound Social Security plan to maximize those survivor benefits should one of you pass away prior to your partner. Okay. That Social Security benefit is going to be one of the best inflation hedges you have as part of your retirement income plan. So you better maximize that Social Security benefit if you do plan to live a long life or you do have longevity in your gene pool. The fifth thing is you need a sound income distribution plan, okay? This may seem obvious, but what I just mentioned with Social Security, let's say you do plan to delay until 70 to get that max Social Security benefit, and let's say you do retire at 60, a fairly early retirement age. Well, that's a potential 10-year gap where you're not going to have any income, and you need to replace that income with your portfolio income, okay? Withdrawals from your portfolio, distributions from your portfolio. So preparing your portfolio for income distributions is going to be critical. And having a process in place, a disciplined process in place to spin off that income on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, whatever the timing is that you're collecting cash flow from your portfolio, is going to be so critical. Okay. Because we've all heard the notion we want to be buying low and selling high. Well, when you're accumulating wealth, when you're saving for retirement, saving in your 401k, saving in your IRA, okay, it's all buying. I mean, you're just buying shares of all of the investments that you own in your portfolio. When you're in the distribution phase, you're not buying shares anymore. Okay. You're turning the portfolio on for income. And yes, some of that income will come from cash flows like interest income or dividends from stocks. But some of that income is going to come from selling an investment or selling multiple investments each month or each quarter or each year. So again, having a disciplined process, having an unemotional process to distribute that income so you're not selling the wrong thing at the wrong time is going to be so critical to maintain that portfolio longevity that you need for retiring early. Well, let's say you do all these things and you prepare to retire early and you don't. What's the impact? Well, nothing really negative that I could speak of. I mean, the one thing is, the one drawback is you're going to need to tighten your belt a little bit more. If you're struggling to save 10 to 15% and an earlier retirement is calling for a savings rate closer to 20 or 25%, that might be tough for you. It may not even be doable for you. Without working a second job. And I'm not going to go out here and say, hey, go out and get a second job or, go out and ask for a 20% pay raise. But what I'm saying is if you have capacity to save and invest a little bit more, there's really only benefits to you. You could potentially spend or gift more in retirement. You could potentially build your dream home, right? Or maybe even have a second home, like a vacation home, free and clear. Maybe you could have a better opportunity to leave a financial legacy, a multi-generational impact for your children and your grandchildren. Maybe you have a different risk capacity. Maybe you've saved more than enough. You're quote unquote well-funded for retirement. That even affords you to take on more risk with your investments to build an even larger legacy that you leave behind to the next generation or charitable legacies, charitable goals that you might have. Okay. And maybe this also gives you an opportunity to stock some funds aside for self-funding long-term care. We've talked about long-term care risk in the past. That's one of the top risks for any retiree that's retiring today is those healthcare costs at the end of your life and being a burden on loved ones. And so, maybe if you're able to save and invest more than you need for your own retirement because you plan to retire early and didn't, now you can potentially self-fund long-term care. So there's really no drawbacks to you planning for an early retirement and then essentially working longer. Okay. Other than the idea, like I mentioned earlier, is you may need to tighten the belt a little bit more and that may not be doable. Inflation's been pretty high. Things are just expensive. You can't leave the grocery store without spending $100, even if you were just going in to get some milk. I mean, it's just crazy. So I hope this is helpful. And, like I said, those two meetings this week really just kind of hit home with me and sort of made me want to put this out there that planning for this ideal working until 70 because I love what I do. Of course, your plan is going to look great. Okay. So let's stress test that plan. Let's stress test an actual retirement age, which is 62. That's a lot earlier than I thought. Truthfully, I thought the average age may be a little bit longer. Now, I will say white collar workers tend to work a little bit longer than blue collar. So that's a factor. right? But at the end of the day, the average retirement age is 62. So maybe we got to plan for 62 or earlier, okay? Because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these things are not under our control, okay? They're not under our control. So let's focus on what we can control. Your savings rate, your investment strategy, okay? Your distribution process, your ability to manage risk before and during retirement. Let's control the things that we can control, and let's just plan for the worst, hope for the best. That's it, everybody. I hope you found the show helpful. If you're a new listener, we appreciate you, and I hope you found value in today. I hope you give the show a follow if you're a new listener and you're finding value in what we're talking about today. If you're planning for retirement or you've recently retired, this is the show for you. Okay, so make sure to hit the follow button. If you're an existing listener, thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it. If you have been listening for a while and haven't done so already, make sure to leave that 5-star review. It just helps the algorithm. It feeds the algorithm. So Apple Podcasts and Spotify could say, hey, this is valuable. Let's push this out and let's reach more people. Let's impact more people. Again, which is what this show is all about. All right. And again, if you found value in what we're doing, regardless if you're a new or an existing listener, make sure to share this with a friend or family member that's also planning for retirement. Until next time, this is Kevin Lau signing off.